Hi guys, it's Dylan from Bijou Diamond Jewellery in London with another watch video, and today we're looking at my top 3 selection of watches for £3,000. This top 3 selection is made up of watches that I really like, and also watches that our clients own as well. But something I have to note before we get into it is there are so many watches that I could have included in this price bracket. Around £3,000, there are so many options and so many brilliant options as well from all different fantastic brands. That it would be such a long video if I was to include all of them. At the end, I'll discuss briefly some really cool watches that maybe I didn't put in the selection, but these are my top 3 favorite watches, and yeah, let's get into it. Okay, so let's start with number 3 now. At number 3, we've got the Omega Seamaster Diver 300 meters. The specific variation that I'm looking at is the black dial 41mm on the bracelet. And I actually prefer this watch on the NATO strap, but I'll come on to that a little bit later on. For now, we're just going to look at the bracelet variation of this watch. So the retail price of this watch is just under £3,000, which is just so much watch for the money. Amazing price point for this watch. And of course, from us at Bijou Diamond Jewellery, this watch is slightly less than £3,000. Probably, if you watch any Bond films, you may realise why I love this watch. It's the iconic modern day Bond watch. Of course, the old Bond watch was the Rolex Submariner, but this is the modern day version of the Bond watch. It's just such a cool piece. It's just an iconic look. I love Bond films. And lots of our clients that own this watch love Bond films also, and they have partly bought it because of that, but also just because it's just a great, simple looking watch. The reasons why I think this is such a great looking watch is the finishing is so elegant and simple on this watch. There's, you know, variations with the lugs of polished and brushed accents. It's done in such an elegant fashion. I'd actually say it's a much more elegant watch than the Rolex Submariner. The Rolex Submariner is much more of a boxy design, kind of squared off, whereas this just has such a nice flow, elegant flow about it. Those lugs especially is where you'll really see this, but the whole watch is just a much prettier watch than the Submariner. The Seamaster just has, for some reason, much more of a black tie look, you know, much more of a high-end, classier look than the Submariner. And I think that's why it's so brilliant for James Bond, is because he's iconic for wearing his amazing suits, his tuxedos, and looking super sharp. But also it's a brilliant sports watch. So for when he's got missions, when he's you know, assassinating someone or whatever, he can still wear the same piece and it's not going to be too delicate. So it's one of the most versatile watches. I love it really in this black dial. The blue dial is also really cool, but the black dial I think is maybe a little bit more smarter and a little bit more versatile. It's just such a cool, effortless, sporty design. And our clients that own this watch absolutely love this piece. We actually have a few clients that own this piece that also own Audemars Piguets, Rolexes, etc., and they actually just wear this every day because they just love how brilliant it is for everyday use. Just so versatile. And a really comfortable watch as well. My only thing that I don't love about this watch is the bracelet. I think the bracelet is a little bit ugly on this watch. I don't like how complex it is and all the different links. I much prefer the Oyster bracelet on a Rolex Submariner, but it's extremely comfortable. It's just not quite as elegant and doesn't match the same elegant design that the case has. So that's, for that reason, is why I put it on the NATO strap. And the NATO strap combination that I'm showing you on the screen now from Omega is the Bond version of the NATO strap, that grey and black combo. Just such a cool combo. This watch really comes to life, in my opinion, when you put it on that strap. I think that really suits the watch so much better than the bracelet. But of course, you buy on the bracelet and then buy the strap later on. You can obviously buy these super cool NATO straps from Omega direct, or you can buy them from other brands. There's so many options for this sort of lug size, so you'll be there's so many choices for you to choose from. Such a cool, versatile watch. The fact it's got the black bezel and black dial means you can pair it with pretty much any strap color. Okay, now moving on to number 2. At number 2, we've got the Panerai Luminor base logo model. The specific variation that we're looking at is the PAM 00774. Such a cool piece, one of my favorite Panerais. I'm not a huge Panerai fan. I don't love them, as I know their fans are really, really big Panerai lovers, and our clients that own Panerais, they're, you know, hardcore Panerai lovers, and they attract that kind of fan base, which is really, really cool, very loyal fan base. But yeah, personally, I don't love them because of the size, but this is just such a cool piece. And I really couldn't leave it out of this top 3 selection. The retail price on this watch is £4,000. They sell, the market value of this watch is kind of more around the early to mid £3,000 mark. So This piece is obviously an iconic looking Panerai. It's just the pure essence and DNA of a Panerai, very simple or simplified version. Kind of the more higher end versions or editions or in their collection are the more popular models, but this is a kind of more base entry level model. It's not quite as popular, but the same DNA and essence of Panerai is still present in this model. I absolutely love the classic Panerai look on this watch. That shape, that iconic case shape with the crown guard, the kind of big, almost square style of the case, and those big straps and buckles, really cool look. My favorite thing about this variation though, the 774 variation, is the fact that we've got this little blue logo down at 6 o'clock, the Officine Panerai logo down at 6 o'clock, with the matching stitch on the strap. I just love that design. Of course you can place any strap on any watch, but obviously the fact that the logo on the dial is matching in colour to the stitch is just such a cool little detail. The whole watch has just really nice complementing colours, the blue with the kind of yellowish off-white of the indexes and the markers on the dial and the hands. And the textures as well on the watch, that polished finish on the case, the brush finish on the crown guard. We've got the really amazing texture of the actual strap itself. We've got that kind of sheen, nice sheen from the big sapphire crystal, and also a nice shiny black dial. So really, really cool watch, and all the different textures mixed into one, even though it's a very simple watch in general. It's got some really nice finer details on it, which is why I really, really want to put it in. This Panerai, like all Panerais, is beautifully built. It's incredibly solid. I don't usually love numbers on the dial, so those big index numbers, but it just works on a Panerai. It's just an iconic Panerai look. And the fact that the dials are so huge, it really does work and make those numbers really big as well. Some people don't really like this base model because it doesn't feature the sandwich dial that the higher end models feature. Sandwich dials basically is where the numbers are actually cut out or etched out of the dial, and then underneath that layer is placed the loom. So it's kind of like a three-dimensional dial. It adds real depth and character, but I actually really like this dial also. This dial features like applied markers, so kind of painted on loom. So they're kind of raised above the dial a little bit. Still gives it really nice character, but it just doesn't have the same complexity and attention to detail that the sandwich dial has. One thing I personally don't like about this watch is the fact that it's almost all polished. Because it's such a huge case size at 44mm, I think it really should have more brushed accents in there to kind of tone that down, not make it look so big and shiny. Because it is a very big shiny watch. The crystal on this watch is huge as well, and that really adds to the whole shiny effect of this piece. I think perhaps if they made the middle part of the case, the middle sandwich section of the case, a brushed finish kind of around the crown area at that same level as the crown, I think it would really break up the design, and maybe make the lugs with a brushed finish as well. And just keep certain accents in polished, I think it would work a little bit better, but nonetheless it still looks really, really cool all in a polished finish. Overall, this watch is just so much watch for the money, just such a cool piece, great history with Panerai, built to an exceptional level, a really cool classic minimalistic design on this piece, and the strap just adds a really nice casual texture to the whole watch. Now finally at number one, you probably all be able to predict this because I always talk about this watch. It's one of my favorite watches, and I always say it's so much watch for the money. And that is the Omega Speedmaster Moonwatch, specifically the Hesalite version on the bracelet, the 42mm, which is kind of the standard iconic moonwatch nowadays. And the design has remained pretty much the exact same since the 60s. And as you probably heard me say in other videos, in my opinion, this watch is probably the best priced watch in the whole entire world. The retail price on this variation that we're looking at here today with the Hesalite and the bracelet is just under £3,700, but the market value of this watch is more like early to mid £3,000 mark. From us, it's kind of early to mid £3,000. So much watch for the money. In my opinion, it's probably the best priced watch in the whole entire world. I would definitely buy this watch on the bracelet, but same with the Seamaster, I'd put it on a NATO strap, one of the Omega's NATO straps, or another strap. There's so many options, especially as this watch features a pretty standard lug width. The reason why I'd buy this with the Hesalite crystal is that is the ultimate Speedmaster. It is the Speedmaster, the Hesalite crystal version. If you're looking back in the 60s when they took it to the moon, the reason why they made the crystal out of Hesalite was because Hesalite is a form of plastic basically. The crystal, when it breaks or if it shatters, it breaks into large chunks and pieces, whereas sapphire crystal tends to break into lots of tiny little finer pieces, which is obviously extremely dangerous in a zero gravity environment like space, where those sapphire crystals, the little shards of crystal would be flying around the spacecraft. So it was important that if someone accidentally knocked this, that it was able, or they would be able to recover those pieces. I do own an Omega myself with a Hesalite crystal, and it gives the watch real character as the crystal itself develops scratches and marks and blemishes over the years. It gives the watch real character and it really adds to that kind of retro look that this watch already has. I also love the fact that it's a domed Hesalite crystal, whereas the sapphire is much more of a flat surface. I think the whole design of this watch really suits the Hesalite much more. This watch is just such a cool piece. The history of this watch is obviously incredibly important. The fact that this watch is connected to such an important milestone for mankind, actually going to the moon, and the fact that this was the watch that was selected to go to the moon. It's an iconic watch, and you're really buying a piece of history. It doesn't matter if you're buying one from the 60s or now. The actual case design of this watch and the overall design of this watch is just beautiful. It's just such a nice piece. It is 42 mil, so it's quite a large watch, but I have a relatively small wrist at 16.5 centimeters, and this watch just wears brilliantly. Please go check out my review of this piece, because it'll give you really in-depth history on this piece, which is incredibly important and relevant with this watch. And also all the features of this piece as well. So make sure you go and check that out. So yeah, the case finishing on this piece, just really nice. It is a big watch, but it wears not too big. It fits comfortably on my wrist at 16.5 centimeters. I reckon probably down to 15 centimeters or 15.5, this would look great. The lug design is similar to the Seamaster in the way they swoop in. They're very elegant. The mixture of the way that Omega uses a mixture of polished and brushed finishes on this watch is just perfect. The watch just in general is just an amazing, amazing piece. The bezel, everything about this really for me harks back to the 60s and those design, that retro look. It just has a real amazing retro look to it. It really reminds me of space every time I look at it. Those hands, the way they kind of have that textured white finish. The lume on the dial is kind of that off-white. Those white textures, the off-white of the indexes and the hands really reminds me of like the texture of the moon. It kind of looks like a moon, and like you've kind of got moon rock or moon dust and dusted it on the hands. And then the actual texture of the dial as well, the black. It's not like a jet black or a gloss black like a Submariner. It's much more of a satin, almost like a grey black. It just looks like space, like you're looking out at the stars. All those tiny little fine increments around the dial really remind me of stars as well. It kind of has that twinkly look. And then the tachymeter on this watch reminds me of like an old space dial, like inside a spaceship. I love the fact that Omega has barely changed this watch at all since the 60s and since it became the moon watch for NASA. I think that's a really cool thing from them to just keep it the same and to still offer you the option of the Hesalite to, for it to be as original as possible to that original design. And then for those that want to wear it every day and maybe want to use and abuse it, the sapphire crystal is there as an option as well. I would not wear this probably on the bracelet, even though the bracelet is a really nice bracelet on this watch. I much prefer it to the Seamaster bracelet, but I would definitely be wearing this on a NATO strap. The one that I'm showing you on screen now with the kind of stripe down the middle is just such a cool combo. Again, in keeping with that whole space design for me. Yeah, so many options for straps that you can put on this watch though. Again, a really standard lug width. I honestly don't think you can get any better watch than this for £3,000. This is just such a cool watch. And it's so much watch for the money as well. Okay, so that concludes our top three, but there are some other watches that I could have included. Just briefly mentioning them, a Breitling Avenger is one of my favorite watches as well. Really cool looking piece, all in black. Of course, the Tag Heuer Carrera is an iconic piece, just a very classic design. For those that really like the Rolex Daytona, the new style ceramic Daytona, this is a great option because it's got a very similar look. They both have a very similar history and heritage in terms of racing. So yeah, for a fraction of the money as well. Brilliant pieces. There are so many other watches that I can mention. Of course, you could look at also some older vintage Rolexes, maybe some used Rolexes. If you're looking maybe to spend kind of towards the higher end of the £3,000 mark, maybe towards the £4,000 mark, you could maybe get an old Explorer 2, a Polo Explorer 2, which is just a really, really cool watch. The 16570, that's such an awesome watch. Or you could get maybe an Explorer 1. Tons and tons of options for £3,000. It's a brilliant, brilliant price point to look at some really fantastic watches. but for me, the best watch is by far the Speedmaster. Thanks guys for watching. Let us know in the comments what watches you'd add to this top 3. The next price point I'm going to look at is £5,000, and then we're going to continue going up from there. But lots and lots of watches to look at £5,000 as well. And as always, if you're interested in any of the pieces mentioned in this video, then don't hesitate to contact us. Our details are in the description, and also at the end of this video, it'd be a pleasure to order one of these watches in for you.